بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us. And in the name of Asia Middle East Center for Research and Dialogue, AMEC, we would like to thank you for joining us in this important discussion, which is titled Gaza Genocide and the Collapse of the Western Media Narrative. So for more than 19 months, or we have now more than 19 months have passed since the launch of Tufan al-Aqsa and the subsequent horrific genocide that committed against the Gaza or the people of Gaza. And according to official statistics or latest statistics, we have over 53,000 Palestinians have been martyred in Gaza and West Bank, out of which we have around 18,000 children and more than 12,400 women. And the number of injured has surpassed 121,000. With all of that, and despite the magnitude of these atrocities, Western media continues to either collude with the occupying power in concealing its crimes, or at their best, at the best of their efforts, they fail to report the events with truth and integrity. So, to shed a light on this crucial topic, we are honored to host Dr. Azzam Tamimi, who is one of the foremost Palestinian political commentators and an author of one of the most authoritative studies on Hamas. Welcome, Dr. Azzam, and thank you for joining us in this topic.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, so let's start by asking you this question, and maybe we will, at the end of this session, we'll open the door for, or open the floor for Q&A. Or maybe we can have the Q&A after each question. Let's see how we will run it. My first question here, in your view, Dr. Azzam, how was the Western mainstream media systematically misrepresented the war on Gaza? And what are some key tactics they have used to shape the public perceptions?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The way the Western mainstream media handled the war on Gaza is really a continuation of the manner in which these media have always dealt with the Palestinian issue. Bias toward Israel, even implicit hostility towards the Palestinians, toward whatever is Arab and whatever is Muslim. And had it not been for the fact that there has luckily been a parallel source of information, or a parallel media, if one may call it so, probably the mainstream media would have managed to get away with the process of misguiding the public worldwide about what's going on in Palestine. We have seen, despite that such bias, we have seen the mainstream media, or parts of the mainstream media, become or feel obliged to tell the truth simply because of the enormous influx of information out of Gaza, out of Palestine generally, and the eagerness on the part of the new generation, especially university students around the world, to find out not only what is going on, but actually the roots of what led to what is going on. And despite the enormous cost to the Palestinians, I don't remember ever during my political age that I've experienced such an educational opportunity for the new generation across the world to learn about Palestine. More recently, we've seen more significant shifts in the Western media, and that's because of two things. First, because of what I referred to of the parallel sources of information, but also because of the exposure of the hypocrisy on the part of whoever supported Israel throughout this genocide that's been taking place for nearly 20 months now. So we just to give you an example, the Financial Times, which is quite conservative, quite mainstream and establishment media, published an editorial shaming the Western governments for their silence about the massacres that are being perpetrated against the Palestinians in Gaza. So there has been a shift, and that shift was imposed on them because of these factors.
Okay, so now, I mean, also there has been a shift, but why do you think the major Western media outlets have maintained such consistent pro-Israel bias for the decades? I mean, for the past decades? Is it ideological, political, or driven by something else?
Well, because these mainstream media are the product of the establishments that exist within the West. And these establishments are historically allied with the Zionist project. Some of them are responsible for the initiation of the Zionist project to start with. Some of them, like the United States government, continue to be responsible for arming the Zionists to the teeth without any consideration for international law, for human rights, for anything. These media are they are not owned by governments. Usually, mostly they're not owned by governments. They're owned by maybe public institutions like the BBC or private interests. But these have generally allied themselves with the Zionist colonial project in Palestine. Of course, some of these outlets went through different stages in their history. Take The Guardian, for instance, in Britain. The Guardian started as a Zionist mouthpiece a long time ago when Israel was established, and even before that. But then later on, it adopted a more leftist sort of position, giving space to Palestinian voices, to Arab voices, to anti-imperialist voices. But then there was a later shift. There was another shift at the later stage due to financial pressure, because these institutions rely either on sponsorship, they rely or on advertisements, or on donations, and these usually come from firms or individuals who are supportive of the Zionist project in Palestine. So there are really a number of reasons why this has been the case, and why they are so biased in their coverage of not just Palestine, but Muslim issues in general, I regret to say.
Currently, I mean, this week specifically, we have seen some change or kind of shift of the interests of the government. They started criticizing the current stage of war on Gaza. Is that reflected on the ground in terms of media and the mainstream media? Have you noticed that, Dr. Azzam?
Well, the mainstream media could not continue to ignore the reality on the ground, because that reality is being reported by the parallel media, is being reported and commented on, and even condemned by international organizations like the International Red Cross, like the United Nations, and the various agencies and various other humanitarian organizations. And there are two reasons, of course, for the recent shift, and especially the joint communique issued by Britain, France, and Canada in particular, and also the vocal condemnation by the United Nations of the Israeli recent tactics. The first reason is that they feel they are being challenged by their own readers. They are challenged by their own customers. They are being challenged by a large constituency of the new generation, especially the students and the youth in their own countries, and they found themselves being accused of hypocrisy, of double standard. So their credibility was hemorrhaging. They were losing in credibility. But of course, the second reason is that these governments feel that the current Netanyahu governing coalition is jeopardizing the future of Israel, that this policy is putting Israel itself in danger. And of course, out of concern for Israel and out of concern for its future, they come up with this position. Now it is no longer unfamiliar to hear people talk about the end of Israel, the end of Zionism, or post-Zionism. Prominent writers are talking about this, prominent lawyers. And we have here in Britain, for instance, a legal firm that is representing Hamas in calling on the government to deproscribe the movement, to remove its name from the list of terrorist organizations. So there's so much going on, and people are more daring, and people are no longer intimidated by accusations of anti-Semitism that have constantly been linked with any criticism of Israel. This has contributed to this result. There's also another factor, which is the position of the world Jewish community. The Jewish community around the world is split. There are those who are opposed to what Israel is doing, some on ideological basis or religious basis, like Naturi Karta, but some feel that what Israel is doing is actually a threat, is posing a threat to Jews wherever they happen to be living, because Israel is doing this in the name of the Jews. And we know, of course, that throughout the history of this colonial project, many Jews opposed it, and many Jews continued to dissociate themselves from it. And now I think there is an increasing number of Jews who want to have nothing to do with Zionism, and these governments are seeing this, are observing these changes, and are taking notice.
Now let's talk about Europe overall. Is there any difference in reporting the Gaza genocide across the European continent? I mean, are there? Can you please map out these differences, if there is any?
Oh, there are definitely differences. Of course, I know only English, so I don't follow the media that is written or spoken in other languages. Yep. But if we talk about governments, not the media, and I'm sure that mainstream media in each country reflects to a large extent the positions adopted by their government. There are governments like Spain, Ireland, Norway, who have right from early on been criticizing the Israeli genocide, and even calling it genocide, and supporting the efforts to arrive at a ceasefire. But there are governments, like some of those ruled by ultra right or extreme right fanatics, like, for instance, Bulgaria, I think, Poland, maybe the Netherlands to some extent, as well as probably others, who have, despite all the facts, being constantly apologizing for the crimes committed by Israel. And I'm sure that this is reflected in the media. But even within each country, the mainstream media is not acting exactly the same. There are also differences and variations. And I'm sure that people who are monitoring this can see these differences.
Okay. How about the impact of the social media and the individual reporters that we have right now? Did that play a role in changing or forcing the mainstream media to change their narrative or try to come down to the ground and comply with what the people want?
I'm sure that the social media played a significant role. Now, remember that even these social media or these various platforms are owned also by private individuals or by corporations. And they also try, some of them like Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, formerly Twitter, which is now called X. They also try to reduce the publication of reports that are in favor of telling the truth about what's going on in Palestine. And they've blocked some accounts, they've taken certain measures. However, it is impossible to have similar control to that the mainstream media has on its output. Because if you're talking about radios, televisions, or newspapers, they have editorial teams, they have people who are in charge of monitoring what comes in and what comes out, and they do update their policies constantly in lieu of what is considered to be politically correct. Whereas in the social media, these are huge outlets whose philosophy is based on giving individual members of the public the opportunity to publish, to express their opinions, and therefore it's not as easy to curtail or to control. And we've seen a number of prominent figures in the media, in cinema, in the arts, in publishing, in various other disciplines, in medicine as well, take to the social media to talk about the issue in a manner that is not allowed in the mainstream media. And I think that made a great difference.
Okay. Maybe now we can shift to talk more about the Palestinian or the Palestinian cause in general, not only focus on the media. But before that, I would like to open the floor for questions. So if anyone has questions, please raise your hand. And then we can take questions. Okay. Sorry, one more question, Dr. Abad. We are still in the media field. What was the role of pro-Palestine individuals who are working in the institutes among in the mainstream media of Europe? Did they play a strong role in bringing the cause up to that level, or they could not do much because of threatening of their life, or they face some difficulties doing that?
I think the individuals working for mainstream media, even if they were interested in publishing the truth and had sympathies with the victims of Zionism, they could not do much because of the tight control exercised by the mainstream media. And the only thing they could do, as happened early on in the BBC, is to submit their resignations. Quite a few employees of the BBC actually resigned. And because one of the scandals that we know now about the BBC is that they have an Israeli guy who is commissioned with the task of monitoring the output and deciding what is allowed and what is not allowed, who is to be invited as a guest and who is not, who is allowed to comment and who is not allowed to comment, and what sort of phrases to be used, what sort of questioning, how questions are drafted, etc. So these individuals had no option but to resign. However, the exposure of the hypocrisy of the Western governments and the mainstream media could not have been achieved without a collective effort. And in that collective effort, so many people contributed. Some are famous, some are not, some are prominent, some are not. But there was a room for whoever wanted to do something to do it, if they really wanted to do it, within the context of their job, their employment, their mission, or during their free time. And I think this is what brought about pressure to bear on Western governments, as we have seen in recent days. That pressure is bearing not only on governments like Britain, France, and Canada, but also the United States of America. And we saw that during his recent tour of the Middle East. President Trump discounted Israel from his tour. And not only that, there were several reports, press reports, many credible, many we can say are credible, talking about that he was unhappy with the way Netanyahu was conducting the war in Gaza.
Okay, so we try to open the floor for questions. Yeah, yes, Dr. Muslim.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Noor. Thank you very much, Dr. Azzam, for these enlightening perspectives. I wish to ask about the scenario in the academic world, in the UK and in the West in general. Is it similar to that of the media world? And so far, if anybody is to speak about the Palestinian resistance on social media, they have to, use a lot of codes. They have to be careful with the terminology. Even the Palestinian issue at large, sometimes they use symbols like the watermelon and so on. How about academia? If one is to publish or to hold conferences or seminars in the UK and across Europe, how convenient is it for academic practitioners, professors, even students to speak about the Palestinian issue freely in the West? Thank you.
Well, academia is not one and the same. I mean, this is also varied. But what is really common to all academic institutions is that the Zionist lobby in the West is waging a fierce war on whoever dares speak their mind about what's going on in Gaza. And we've seen this, and some universities succumb to this Zionist project, to this Zionist pressure, or the pressure from the Zionist lobby, and some resist. For instance, in London, there are two London universities, or two colleges that are part of the London University. One is King's College, and one is Queen Mary. And I've been to both, invited by students. When I went to King's College, I wasn't allowed in, and I had to address the students from the street, from the main road, behind bars. Whereas in Queen Mary, I was welcomed, and the lecture was properly organized, and the student union there was very cooperative. So what is also common to academia is that there is a lot of dynamism, there's a lot of movement going on among students as well as among staff, many of whom are frustrated, are angry. They want to do something about this, and sometimes their university managements don't allow. Sometimes the Zionist lobby has its ways of pressuring decision makers this way or that way. And America is even a much clearer situation where we've seen the Trump administration blackmail educational institutions like Harvard, like Columbia and others, and take severe security measures against proponents of the Palestinian struggle or Palestinian self-defense, to detain them, to deport them, to deny them their seats in universities, and even deny them their degrees. So there is a real war really going on. But I think overall, if we look at past experiences and try to extrapolate into the future, I think all of this is serving the Palestinian cause and not the Zionist cause. I think the Zionists are losing and are not winning.
Thank you. Any other questions? Our respective audience, if anyone has any question. Mansour Ahmed, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for enlightening us on such important topics of the media and the Western politicians and their hypocrisy. I have two questions. One is related to media. Like previously, I belonged to Pakistan in the 9/11 case and post 9/11. We had a narrative built through the globe regarding the Islam and terrorism and war on terror and such things. So the Western media had the credibility regarding establishment of peace and sort of a neutral reporting and sort of things. So as we see that there are many platforms that are now delivering information, and some at individual and some at organizational level and some at state level. So in today's scenario, is there any, do you see that there is some credible source which can we say as a neutral or that serve on merit only? Is there any channel or some source or some organization which we can refer to and which we can rely on that, okay, this is the source that is like neutral and has got its credibility to be taken that way? So that was my first question. And second question is, since we have a face-off of the Western media and the Western politicians and also the Muslim politicians, I'll say the governments, do you see that the impact of the media, like it was considered to be a pillar of the state and of the globe to bring a change and to manipulate things? It's like socio-economical and political and military, everything. So what impact you are observing at a global level, and do you see any agent of change arising from the impact of this media through the change through the media from the Western world? I mean, some specific group of people who can lead this change. So these are my two questions. Thank you.
Well, regarding the first question, it is really impossible to say you can rely on this particular platform for everything you need to know about the world. There are relatively more credible platforms than others, but it is your duty and my duty and the duty of the audience anywhere in the world to verify what we hear and what we watch, and if we have doubts, we have to check whether this is credible or not. You have to make an effort, but of course, with the passage of time, you become used to knowing that a certain platform has a 90% credibility compared to another platform, etc. Now, generally speaking, the mainstream media is keen on its credibility because its credibility is its most important capital. However, they play sort of games in order to convince the public that they are still credible while not telling the whole story. For instance, take for instance the roots of the problem. When you talk about the 7th of October, it is as if the 7th of October for most of them was the beginning of history. There is no mention or reference or discussion of what led to the 7th of October, of the occupation of Palestine since 1948, of the massacres perpetrated against the Palestinians since that time until today, of the blockades imposed on Gaza for 17 years prior to the 7th of October. So this is one way of deluding the public, of yes, you tell them certain facts, but you hide from them the context that is essential in order to explain those facts. Today, if I were to, in the English-speaking world, I would recommend Middle East Eye, a news website in the UK, which has a high degree of credibility. There are also others. Even in the mainstream media, there are some that are more credible than others. But we have no choice but to watch them, read them, but we have the responsibility of scrutinizing the level of credibility they have. Now, regarding your second question, if I understood you, you're asking me whether there are efforts in the media to change things, I think. Is that what the question was about?
Yeah, it was about the impact of the media that it has created. I mean, now we have a face of the politicians and the governments and the Western hypocritical media. So is there any change that you are foreseeing anywhere in the world at a government level, at some great organization level, which can lead this change to what can I say, to a true justice, maybe I can say?
Well, yes, of course there are changes, and the recent announcement by three very important governments, the government of Britain, of France, and of Canada, and their condemnation of the Israeli government for what it's doing, starving the people of Gaza, that is an important change. Of course, it has come so late that we have already lost more than 53,000 people in Gaza. But it has come, it has arrived. And I think this was preceded by positions taken by other governments, like the government of Ireland, the government of Spain. And I think there is also some potential for change in America itself. If you study the experience of the Vietnamese people in their struggle for freedom, or the struggle of the people of South Africa against apartheid, or the struggle of the people of Algeria against French colonialism, or more recently, the struggle of the Afghani people against American colonialism and imperialism, you will find that this change happens eventually, but it takes time. And the cost to the victims is quite high. But this is a sacrifice that has to be made. It's inevitable. There is no freedom, there is no dignity without sacrifices.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Olsi, I think you have a question.
Yes.
Sorry?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, we can.
Thank you, Dr. Tamimi, for your presentation. Now, in the West in general, you are known as somebody who is sympathetic to Hamas, but your public declarations very often have been contrary to what Hamas was thinking. I have here in mind that Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, and the leadership of Hamas, they joined the axis of resistance led by Iran, and they were even killed. I mean, Ismail Haniyeh, he was killed in Tehran while he was hosted by the Iranians. On the other hand, I have seen that you supported the ousting of the government of Assad, and as we all have seen, the coming to power of Abu Muhammad al-Jolani or Ahmad al-Shara, was the work of secret services. So the situation is somehow similar to Russia during World War I, when the government of Alexander Kerensky was fighting against the Germans, and the German secret service, they paid the Bolsheviks and Lenin to overthrow the government of Kerensky in order to offer peace to Germans. And we have seen now that with the coming to power of Ahmed al-Shara, he has joined the Zionist camp. I mean, he is openly a traitor. He has joined the Abdullahs and bin Salmans of the Arab world. And Syria, which was the last country in the Arab world to not exactly 100%, but in a way to stand against Israel and in a way to support the Palestinian resistance, and Hezbollah is out of the equation. Do you ever regret about the ousting of the Syrian government now when you see what Ahmed al-Shara and the Zionist Arab leaders are doing with the Syrian case and with the Palestinian? We have the arrest of Palestinian fighters in Syria, from the director of PLFP General Command to the members of Islamic Jihad and what have you. So, I mean, at least for us as outsiders, we perceive Ahmed al-Shara as the Lenin of the Arab world.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I completely disagree with your analysis and your designation of Ahmed al-Shara, but this is not really our topic. I'm most... I'd be delighted to talk about Syria in a special session about Syria.
Sorry, Doctor. Sorry for interrupting you. It's optional for you if you want to answer or you don't answer, because out of the topic,
what I would like to say is that I would never be sorry about supporting the right of the Syrian people to be free and dignified and to choose their own government.
Excuse me, but in Syria we don't have any freedom. We have Al-Qaeda dictatorship being installed.
Olsi,
no, hold on a second. This is not...
Dr. Olsi, sorry, I have to mute you, sorry. Yeah. Okay, this is out of the topic, so let's just get back and talk about the topic that we are here. Okay, Dr. Azzam, you mentioned, you spoke about Trump's visit to the area. What is your assessment of this visit, and what was it covered in the, Western media? Did they discuss it in details, or what is your assessment of that?
Well, of course, anything Trump does nowadays is very attractive to the media. I mean, here, our TV stations, for instance, the BBC News, they'd stop their coverage at any time Trump is saying anything to relay a press conference or a mere meeting in the White House, in the Oval Office. Or Trump is a newsmaker. So, and his trip to the Gulf was covered in full, actually. Everything he did there, his meetings, his statements, the signing of the deals, etc. Now, with regard to the impact of that visit on Palestine, we were hoping, many people were hoping that it might yield some pressure on the Israelis to agree to a ceasefire and to ending the war and to exchange prisoners. However, it seems that Netanyahu was more interested in preserving his ruling coalition than appeasing his main ally in Washington. And this probably led to what the news media reported of tension between the two men. Now, regarding the funds that were promised to the Trump administration, I think this is the price of weakness. The Arab governments in the Gulf are very weak, they are vulnerable, and they feel they need to compete to win the heart of the Lord of the White House. This is what we saw.
Maybe another question about the UK stand now on Palestinian issue? Where do you see the UK official government stand? And what's the difference between the stand of the Labour and the Conservatives? And is there big gaps, big difference in between them?
Well, until yesterday, we did not notice any significant improvement in the position of the official establishment in the UK. Whether the government is Conservative or Labour, it didn't really make a difference. But yesterday, the British Prime Minister, as well as the British Foreign Secretary, made statements in Parliament that people would have wished to see more than 20 months ago, or let's say 20 months ago. They came quite late, as I mentioned earlier, but they expressed the sort of concern or anxiety that British politicians feel regarding the situation in Gaza.
So maybe that we can conclude with the last question. If there's no other questions from the audience, any questions from the audience? Okay, so your Dr. Azzam, your general assessment, your general view, and of the Palestinian issue right now. Where is it heading to, and what do you see next? Maybe we can conclude in this for the last 10 minutes, if you don't mind.
Well, I have no doubt that we are seeing the beginning of the end of the Zionist colonial project in Palestine. And as I mentioned earlier, anyone who studies the way former colonial projects ended, we are seeing the same thing being repeated in this case. Now, early on the 7th of October 2023 itself, some American specialists, I think they were military historians, compared what happened on the 7th of October in Palestine to what happened in 1968 in Vietnam in what is known as the Tet Offensive. And they predicted that as the Tet Offensive was the beginning of the end of American imperialism in Vietnam, the 7th of October was going to be the beginning of the end of Zionism in Palestine. And that's why I would recommend to my dear friends and the brothers and the sisters and comrades to enlighten themselves about historical examples, historical precedents. They are really very important because they can explain to us what is going on today and help us predict what is likely to happen tomorrow or the day after. It's not unique. We saw this in Vietnam, we saw it in Algeria, we saw it in South Africa, we saw it in Afghanistan, we saw it in every other area where the struggle against colonialism succeeded in eventually ending that imperialist endeavor. Yes, today the Palestinians are bleeding, and they are bleeding profusely, and they're losing their young and old, and their homes in Gaza are being leveled to the ground, their hospitals, their schools, their livelihood. But this also happened before to the nations that struggled against this kind of settler colonialism, which is ideological, because it's based on the idea that God gave you a license to do what you're doing, and therefore whatever crime you are accused of perpetrating, you are pardoned by the divine you believe in, because this is a necessary measure in order to achieve that divine promise. And the Zionists believe in this. The South African white minority believed in this until apartheid came to an end. The white men of Europe who pillaged the Americas and killed the indigenous, or finished off the indigenous population, and the white man of Europe who did the same in New Zealand and on Australia believed in exactly the same sort of doctrine, same sort of ideology, that they had a license from God. And there was a recent documentary by the BBC about the settler movement in the West Bank and the sort of mentality they have, the mindset and the ideology and the statements they were making and the justifications they were coming up with for dispossessing the Palestinians and killing them. And there's a fascinating book about all of this. It is worth really reading, by Michael Pryor. The book is called The Bible and Colonialism. It tackles this issue of using the pretext of a divine promise to kill others and dispossess them. And this started with the examples that the author of the book gave included the conquista of the Americas, apartheid in South Africa, and Zionism in Palestine. I would also recommend another very good book by John Rose. It's called The Myths of Zionism. And it just shows how the founding members of the Zionist movement, the Jewish Zionist movement that is, because the Christian Zionist movement is much older, and it is the one that paved actually the way for the Jewish Zionist movement and what is known as political Zionism. John Rose, in his book, The Myths of Zionism, explains that the founding fathers of Zionism were all atheists and secular, yet they used the Bible to justify their crimes against the Palestinians. So I'm really optimistic despite the pain. Of course, I feel sorry for all the losses our people are incurring in Palestine, but I am 100% confident that this is not going to be in vain, inshallah.
Inshallah, this is what we believe in, and we also think the price is quite expensive, but inshallah, or quite heavy, but inshallah, the result will be with what Allah wants. With that, we would like, if there's no more questions.
Can I ask question?
Yes, please, Dr. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Azzam. My name is Dr. Feroz. I'm a senior researcher for the Palestine Study Group. I have a question. I'm sure that you are likely to anticipate this question. We have heard news about the likelihood of Jolani getting into Abraham Accords. You know, there are news about this. What are your thoughts? And do you see that if in the event of normalization between Syria and also Israel, Syria will be exactly like the rest, like what we are seeing with the GCC countries, making peace with Israel and, you know, letting go the broader Palestinian resistance and etc. That is my question. My follow-up question to that is also, there's been a lot of conversation about Syrians wanting to get at least some food, water, electricity. They have talked about this, and the idea is if they're able to get all the sanctions lifted out by the states, they can at least enjoy all these kind of, you know, luxuries. But again, if we look backward in retrospective, as early in 2004, 2005, 2009, IMF has been recorded that Syria is indeed moving towards the path of empowering its economy. So I bet during that time itself, Syrians have actually enjoyed all the things that they should be enjoying, right? So why from the 2011 itself, the uprising occurred, etc.? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Well, first of all, let's verify the facts. I don't think that we have on the record anything that proves that the current Syrian government is heading toward normalization. This was probably an American request or an American demand. Some people said it was a condition for lifting the sanctions, Some say, no, it wasn't a condition for lifting the sanctions, but it was a requirement or a request of some sort. I don't know Jolani myself or Ahmed al-Shara myself. I don't know him. I never met him. But I have heard from some of my friends who are close to his circle that this is highly unlikely. It is highly unlikely that Syria will join the Abrahamic Accords or will engage in normalization. Of course, having said this, there is nothing really impossible in politics, because politics eventually is the result of some sort of a balance of power. And the Syrian, the Syria as a country and Syria as a people are in a very bad shape after so many years of devastation, of dictatorship, of corruption, and also of struggle for freedom and dignity. And therefore, it is expected that in the interim period until they stand on their feet, that they will be vulnerable in a variety of ways. Now, people have different assessments of the former regime in Syria. Some people see the Assad regime as a regime that stood against Zionism and by the Palestinians, and therefore that is sufficient to give it a carte blanche to do whatever it wanted. But actually in 2011, the Arab masses, starting in Tunisia, then Egypt, then Libya, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq, rose against the status quo and the despotic regimes that were oppressing them, irrespective of what sort of politics these regimes claimed to have vis-a-vis the Palestinian issue. When it came to human rights, when it came to democracy, when it came to good governance, they were the lousiest in the world. And that's why the people took to the streets. The Arab revolutions were not a conspiracy by any foreign agency, as some people claim. They were genuine uprisings against despotism. Now, the counter-revolution funded by Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and some others, and blessed by the Americans and their Western allies, managed to crush the Arab revolutions, starting with the coup against democracy in Egypt, and then what they did to Libya, Yemen, and eventually to Tunisia. And Syria was simply left to be devastated by a number of factors. People have different readings of what happened. This is my reading, and I believe that the Assad regime, as far as the Syrian people were concerned, was a lousy regime, was a corrupt regime, and the Syrian people have every right, or had every right, to expect better.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azzam, and thank you everyone for joining us for that 1 hour. And you have given us a very fruitful insight, Dr. Azzam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep it in Mizan Hasanatik, inshallah. And we wish, inshallah, we pray that next session maybe we'll talk about the liberation of Palestine, entire Palestine. And inshallah. Dr. Muslim, Director of AMEC, do you like to close the session?
I just would like to thank, let me just turn this off. I'd like to thank Dr. Azzam for his insights, and we're looking forward to having him in future sessions as well. Hopefully to discuss the Palestinian issue and many other regional developments. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Nordin, for managing this session.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan jami'an. Thank you very much, and see you inshallah again in future session.